Who can say where the road goes, where the day flows? Only time. And who can say if your love grows as your heart shows? Only time.
Hello everybody, how are you doing today? Well, welcome back to another week of history class. This week we are starting with a new civilization, and this one is a very, very important one. So important that from now until Christmas we're going to be talking about that. About where it came from, where it went, and how it's changed the world. A lot of what we do today is based on what this country did. And a lot of people have forgotten it, but it's very, very important. This is probably one of, if not the most important countries that ever existed. And it's called Greece. We talked a little bit about it yesterday. Here's a picture of it. The civilization that grew up out of Greece became one of the most important civilizations that ever existed. But as always, it started small, and it started down here with the little island of Crete. The island of Crete. On Crete was a society, a civilization. We don't know what they called themselves, because a lot of what they were has been lost. In fact, for a long time, people didn't think these people actually existed until they were found. Evidence was found for them about 600 or 700 years ago. So we called them the Minoans. The Minoans, after their most famous king, King Minos. King Minos. We call them the Minoans. We don't know what they called themselves, so we called them the Minoans after one of their most famous kings. Not their first king, but their most famous king. Okay. The Minoans started on the little island of Crete, and they started about 1900 years before Jesus was born. So they were there a very long time ago. And the Minoans, they lived, like I showed you, they lived on an island bigger than Roatan. But like Roatan, if they wanted to survive, they were going to have to do business with other people. Here on Roatan, most of the money comes in from tourists. Well, they didn't have cruise ships back then, so if the Minoans wanted to get enough stuff to live, they had to trade. They would grow food, or they would catch it out of the sea, or other things, and then they would trade it with the other islands and then branch out to the other countries. So they had a lot of business going on with other countries, and they had a very strong navy. If you don't know, a navy means all their ships that they had. Warships, trading ships. They were very respected for their strong navy and for their trading. And they made themselves rich trading in things like fish, food they grew, olives, wine. Wine was a big thing because the area of Greece is very, very good for growing grapes. You get a lot of wine out of it. But interesting thing about the kings of Crete, and I mentioned one of them, is that just about everybody else in the world, when you become king, you're there until you die. Whether it's you die in bed, or somebody kills you, or another army comes in and takes you over, you become king. You're king till you're dead. But with the Minoans on Crete, when you became king, you were only king for 7 years. Only for 7 years. So it was less like a king and more like a president, because they knew that the longer a king stayed in office, the bigger the chance was of him turning out to be a bad person. So they just keep on going through their kings. They didn't let a king stay there too long, get too comfortable. And if you had a bad king, there was a chance that later on you could get a good king in. And that was the beginning of something called democracy, which we'll talk about later as we talk about Greece. But another thing the Minoans were known for was their art. Here's some pictures of Minoan art. It was very beautiful. This is other things that was one of the things they traded in. They sold them all around the area. And it wasn't just art and paintings and vases and carvings. There was also buildings. I mentioned King Minos. One of the things he is rumored he is supposed to have built is this. Now, if you're looking at that and saying, Mr. Matt, what's that supposed to be? The answer is that is a maze. It's a maze, or it used to be. Most of it is gone now, as you can see. But it was a maze. Some place where you go in and wander around throughout, try to find the way out. The people of Crete were very proud of that maze, actually, and they would tell stories about it. And it doesn't look like much there, but as they told stories about it, it would get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until finally they would say that that maze was there to protect the people from a horrible monster. Yeah, they told a monster story about it. They said that this lived in the middle of the maze. Yeah, look at that thing. That's called a Minotaur. A Minotaur has the head of a bull and the body of a man. And supposedly, that thing lived in the middle of the maze, and if you walked into that maze again, you would never come out, because the Minotaur would get you. Woo! I should just go ahead and tell you, in case you're crying right now, that no, that is not true. But the people believed it was true, because that was how things started. You started with a story, and then it got bigger and 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 bigger until you have something like the Minotaur. That's also how their gods started, but we will talk about them on another day. Okay, the island of Crete, the people of Minos, the Minoans. That's where the civilization of Greece started. Okay, tomorrow we will pick up and talk a little bit more about these people. Okay, but for now, let's go over the questions real quick. The first one is, what are the name of the people who lived on the island of Crete? And the answer is that we call them the Minoans. The Minoans. We don't know their names, but that's what we call them. Number two, how long did the kings serve as kings? How long were the kings allowed to be kings in Crete? And the answer to that is 7 years. They were only allowed to be king for 7 years. And the third, what is the name of the monster who is supposed to live in the maze, or the labyrinth, is another word for it, under the palace at Crete? And that is the Minotaur. The Minotaur. Okay, that's all we have for today. Like I said, tomorrow we will pick up with the people of Crete and see what happens to them and how their civilization changed real fast, just like that. We'll talk about that tomorrow. So, goodbye, and I will see you tomorrow.